The ICC, implementation of the new constitution and economic growth were the highlights of Prime Minister Raila Odinga's address as he accepted endorsement as the ODM presidential flag bearer. KTN's Joe Ageo spoke to the ODM leaders soon after the delegates' conference.
We are speaking to the Prime Minister Raila Odinga at the conclusion of the ODM National Delegates Conference that ended here at Kasarani not too long ago. And thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister, for joining us. And indeed, congratulations for picking your party's ticket for March 4th election. Now, the first question I want to ask you, 5 years ago you were here, addressed the delegates, and you were optimistic about the election back then. You did not become president. How are you feeling right now? What gives you so much confidence? I heard you say it is not a question of if, but rather a question of when you become president.
Well, yes, then as now we were very confident of winning. And you know exactly what happened. Our confidence was not misplaced, but some other things intervened which denied us of the victory. We believe that since that time, a lot of reforms have been undertaken in the country to make the playing field more level than it was at that time. So we are optimistic that the kind of mess that we witnessed in 2007 will not be repeated this time round.
Now, this meeting comes just 2-3 days after you announced the Coalition for Reform and Democracy together with the Wiper Democratic Movement and Ford Kenya, in addition to other parties. Earlier, we saw the Vice President at this meeting, and there were glowing tributes to him. And a lot of Kenyans don't remember you, particularly in the friendly terms when it comes to the Vice President. How is this alliance working, and what would you say brings you together this time?
Well, you remember that in 2002, I and the Vice President teamed up together. We formed the LDP, and then we started the Rainbow Movement. We came out of KANU and joined with NAK to form the National Rainbow Coalition together. We signed together. So this notion that we have been at war with each other all this time, it does not wash. Remember, we were together even during the referendum of 2005.
Are you friends with the Vice President, Mr. Prime Minister?
Yes, definitely. There may have been political differences, which happens all the times in politics. That's why they say that in politics there are no permanent enemies, opponent friends.
So what assurance do you give to Kenyans who are wondering, these gentlemen have been quarreling, quote unquote, for the last 5 years. How can we be sure that they would form a government that would stand the test of time?
We have not been quarreling, to be actually specific, because the Vice President has been deputizing the President. So his role in the coalition government has been very specific, very different from my role. Because my role has been to coordinate and supervise the government. So my partner has been the President, with whom we have been sharing power. And there really was no basis of any kind of conflict.
Now, looking forward, you talked about jobs as being the pillar of the sort of the platform that we should be thinking about as we go into the new dispensation. If you take over power, that's something you'll be focusing on. Any idea of what you want to do specifically to ensure that those many youths that we see around the country actually have gainful employment?
People all the times have been looking at the public sector. Public sector cannot have solved these people, because you see the public sector in total employs just about 500,000 people. If you take the entire civil service, you add to it the teachers, you add the police, the military, it's about 500,000, and those jobs are all filled. So the only vacancies that fall is those who die or those who are retired. So what has happened in other countries is first skills development. the youth are trained. So you need to have a crash program where youth are imparted with skills to be able to manage to start these enterprises. Once the businesses start thriving, then they can now apply for a loan to expand the businesses. That way, you reduce the failure rate of these enterprises.
You talked about the question of the ICC, saying that the Coalition for the Reform and Democracy is making a commitment to ensure that those cases are brought back to Kenya. This is an issue that is currently being debated a lot in the country. What sort of guarantees do you have? What sort of assurances do you have that you can actually make this happen?
What you want to demonstrate is first that you have a competent judiciary that can deal with those cases in the same manner and style that the ICC will deal with them.
And the same people for the same crimes?
Same crimes. Secondly, that the witnesses will be protected, and that you feel that the national interest will be best served if it is done that way.
Finally, Mr. Prime Minister, are you going to be the presidential candidate of the Coalition for Reform and Democracy?
That is not a question that I want to answer now. As you know, we are still talking. I mean, I have already been nominated today. The WIPA will have their convention on Monday, and thereafter we will sit down and discuss. As Honorable Kalonzo said, there will be no problem with this. And I can assure you that we will agree